نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بك من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. قال عز وجل في الكتاب المجيد: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. قال عز وجل: ألم نجعل له عينين ولسانا وشفتين وهديناه النجدين فلا اقتحم العقبة وما أدراك ما العقبة فك رقبة أو إطعام في يوم ذي مسغبة. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. We praise Allah Azza wa Jalla on this day. We recognize that the path that He leads us, the straight path, is a path of guidance. And we must pick intentionally the good word and the good work in order to find falah, in order to find najah, success at the end. And so He Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala showed us with revelation the path to righteousness, and He showed us the path to righteousness with reason. That He gave us aql, intellect, to know and differentiate right from wrong. So Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, He mentions in His noble book, O you who believe, be God conscious as you ought to be God conscious. And do not die, or let not death approach you except in a state of Islam, except in a state of being a Muslim, the one who submits to God. So we testify this day that there is no one worthy of worship except Allah and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, His last messenger, to bring the book, the scripture, the Quran, is His servant and messenger. I quoted to you from Surah Al-Balad, a beautiful ayat that mention about the challenge. And there's something about the challenge that you haven't taken that challenge. This is what Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala He mentions to us. But before He talks about the challenge, He talks about something else. He questions. These are rhetorical devices that Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala puts in the Quran. Because the Quran is not that you could just keep reading without thinking. You can't read Quran without thinking. You can't do that because the two go together. So He asked, أَلَمْ نَجْعَلْ لَهُ عَيْنَيْنِ? Haven't I given you two eyes? وَلِسَانًا وَشَفَتَيْنِ? Didn't I give you a tongue and two lips? وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ. And here comes the point. Didn't we guided you to a path? Two paths, right? A path to good and a path to evil. You pick, you select. And this is what we remind each other every Jummah. Which path are we going to select? And so Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala says, فَلَقْتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةِ. He didn't climb the steep path. He didn't take the challenge. He didn't climb the mountain. He didn't reach the summit or the climax, right? He didn't reach there. And what is it? What is that summit that we're talking about? So Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, He raises awareness. You should pay attention to what's coming. And then He talks about all the good deeds and starts with freeing of slaves, feeding poor people, taking care of people of your near of kin and relations. So this is what I want to remind you, that this is the challenge that we have in front of us. And in today's world, where Islam is being attacked, Islam is being talked about in a very false way. There are just lies and deceits. There are some misconceptions as well. And there are people who are ignorant. But we hear that and we see this out in the main media, mainstream. And we question what is happening. We question what is happening. So I want to start with what Islam stands for. And then inshallah continue about talking about why Islam is a problem for certain people. It is. Because they can't understand and they do not have a rebuttal. What Islam stands for one God. They believe in one God. It makes sense. What Islam, well, the messenger, Muhammad, is the final. He's not the first. And he acknowledges the books that came before him. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We believe in Moses, we believe in Jesus, we believe in Noah, we believe in Abraham. What's the quarrel about? We believe in the earlier scriptures, Torah, Zabur, Injil, right? All these scriptures. Then what is the fuss all about? We believe in one God. We believe that the messengers came and guided people to the right path. We believe that these were good people. And Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala revealed to them. We believe all of that. And then you say, well, but this is not the Islam that the mainstream people know about. What do they ask? What do they mention? It starts with, oh, Muslims can marry 4 wives. And then you wonder what type of Islam and Muslims these guys are meeting, or seeing, or observing. Oh, what was the age of Aisha when she married to the Prophet ﷺ? Is that the pillars of Islam? Are these the pillars of Islam? We know the age of Aisha. We understand that the Prophet ﷺ married her when she was a mature adult. But what is the problem? What is the issue? And they talk about these things. Oh, Islam stands for oppressing women. This is where the conversation starts from. Oh, the garb that your women wear, right? This is where Islam stands for. Everything that you look into and you say, these are confused thoughts. And why are people confused? Or why is your opponent confused? The one who's making an argument against Islam. And the only thing you could think of is that when there is no good rebuttal, there is no argument, then people approach what's called mudslinging. They're not interested in understanding. They're not interested in finding the truth. What they're interested in is how can I pick up some dirt, find some dirt about Islam. So what they do is, if I can't argue about worshiping one God, the messengers came with revelation, the Quran is the noble truth, the final revelation. How do I attack? Oh, I attack the character of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When all of the people are his associates, people who believed and people who disbelieved, they acknowledged that he was Sadiq and Al-Amin, honest and trustworthy, truthful person. Nobody argued about that. Even the Meccans knew that those who opposed him, they said he was an honest man. We don't believe in his message. We don't acknowledge him as a leader. We don't accept the revelation comes to him. But we accept that he's a truthful person. See, they didn't have the audacity to go into dirty tricks and dirty play. But this is what we find today. So I remind you of what Islam stands for. Is that Islam stands for good, hasanat. That which is good, that is known to be good. And it's beautiful deeds. And then avoid sayyi'at, that which is ugly, and that which is sin. It's acknowledged by people. Lying is haram. Lying is haram because people do know and they recognize there is harm in it. Cheating people is haram because there is harm in it. And you don't just harm the other people, you harm yourself. Not your dunya, but your akhirah. And this is what Islam reminds us. And وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, to be with your parents in the best of terms, in the terms of ihsan, as though you see God. Ihsana, most excellent manner. And this is what Islam reminds us. not the other way around. And there are many people who get confused. All that which they hear in the media, and wal aqrabin, and the neighbors, and those who are closest to you, people of relationship, people who are your neighbors, be good to them. Not building walls, not erecting structures. We stand on 5 pillars, not many walls. And this is what we have to remind, that Islam stands for doing good, and standing that I am with Him. Allah Azza wa Jalla. Our arrow points up. We say give shahada by acknowledging that the one who's above us. So having mentioned that, inshallah, I want to remind you and myself where we stand in terms of our Islam, our deen. What is our focus? What is the path that we're going to? And it all starts, I want to give you a story, inshallah, before I say it. One of the Salihin people, righteous people, they were asked by somebody who's studying miracles and finding miracles. And this individual went out and to the Muslim world, specifically the city of Damascus. And he went to the mosque and he heard something, so he says, where can I find, to the Imam he asked, where can I find those people who fly and walk on fire and water, and could fly in the air? Where do I find these special people that they said, oh, the karamat of awliya. He's like, yeah, that's the word that I'm looking for. Where are these people? And he's like, I'm just a humble servant, but I could point you to my teacher, maybe perhaps he knows better. So he pointed him to another sheikh. And so the man went, he was looking and he was searching, he was journaling about miracles. And so he went to this next sheikh, and the sheikh was sitting, and he asked him the same question. And the sheikh said, I'm not sure, but let me ask my teacher, my ustad. And he pointed him to another person of knowledge. And that person also, till the same guy perhaps came back to the same first person that he started with. And the man said, if you're really interested in that, people who are flying, I could show you. In Damascus, it happens every day, and pretty much every night. If you're looking for people who fly, these miracles that you talk about. So the man got really excited, and he asked for the address. And the man said, the sheikh said, not too far from here, there is Damascus International Airport. If you want to see people flying in and flying out every single day and every single night, we in Damascus do it really well. But if you're interested in learning about Islam, and finding that miracle that you hold on to the truth, that's more of a miracle than anything else in today's society, in today's world. People who hold on to the truth, and they're steadfast in their Islam. They're steadfast in their Islam. And this is what Islam is calling people to. That's a miracle that you come to Jumu'ah. That's a miracle that our masajids are still full. That's a miracle that we have a school with a beautiful students and teachers and staff members, and we hear Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah, Subhanallah. That's a miracle. So I want to remind you of these miracles, and I want you to remember that we have to be people of taqwa, people of remembrance of Allah, people of dhikr of Allah. وأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. I want to continue in the second part, inshallah. Certain questions were asked, or I was asked to just mention briefly about what is happening. There are a lot of voices in this country, and a voice that has been rising is the voices of people who are called atheists or agnostics as a way of life. That wasn't really the culture or the ascension. At that time when I attended school, I think a lot more was on homosexuality and gay marriage and all these other things, which still continue to exist. But I think now the challenge has shifted. There's a lot of propaganda, I guess I would say, propaganda against Islam and propaganda in general about God and religion in general. So I wanted to talk about, why, when they mentioned the first question a lot of these individuals ask, and they're very cunning, they're very crafty in how they approach religion, and people who believe in religion, especially students who are being exposed to these novel ideas. Does God exist? Why do you believe in God? Does God exist? And, we have to say, first question is, why do you have to reference him to say he doesn't exist? You mentioned trees exist because we know the trees exist, and so you kind of have a picture of it, right, in your mind. You have a concept in your head. So why do you have to mention, does God exist? He exists, that's why you question. The entire humanity, and then they would mention, well, it's like, and this is the argument that they produce, well, it's like Santa Claus, that people just made up God. And so you ask, how many people really believe in Santa Claus? And the answer can be, well, that's not a good argument to start off. Right? You can't equate God, and because this is what they tend to talk about. Because what had happened is, it's like a bad marriage, where the father says to the child, your mother doesn't exist. Because he's so upset, the father is so upset, so he tells his child, your mother doesn't exist. And the child's like, well, how am I here if she doesn't exist? So that's like when people questioning, does God exist or not? And a lot of these individuals who argue for that, right? And the Quran quotes these individuals. It's beautiful if you go back to the book of Allah. It's exactly what they say today. Hayhata hayhata lima tu'adun in hiya illa hayatuna ad-dunya namutu wa nahya wa ma nahnu bimab'uthin. Far, far is that which you have been promised. The day of judgment? No, it's not coming. These are just concepts that they put in your head. Does God exist? Hayhata, hayhata. What they have been promising you. This life and death. That's all it is. And you will not be resurrected. You will not be questioned about things. So the Quran actually puts their argument in the book, and then it gives a rebuttal to what their claims are. And so we mentioned to that it's like a bad marriage, and this is what happens, that people, these individuals, they only remember the group, right, of atheism. They only remember the bad, the sick, the sickness, why there's death, why there are plagues everywhere, why there's destruction, why good people suffer, why all this happens, why there's hunger, why there's poverty, if God is there. Because you haven't put the entire picture together. We believe in what's called hisab and kitab. Right? That is accountability that we would have to face. Everything that is in this life is partial until you combine it with the hereafter. And that's where it all makes sense. But they only realize what's materialistic, and so they base their claims on what exists. They ignore the revelation. They ignore the messengers who came with the guidance. So this is what happens to their mentality, that they're stuck in evil and death and disease and hunger and poverty. This is all they could see. They forget the blessings of God. They forget the happiness. They forget to see the birth. They forget to see all these miracles that happens around them. And so this is what we remind them. And then there's another group of people who are called agnostics. And they make a lot of noise too. And they say, well, you can't be sure about anything. You can't be sure about that. Does he exist? Does he not exist? So they take like the middle position. They say, well, you can never be sure. And then you ask them, are you serious about that? You can never be sure about an understanding of anything. And they said, yes, that's true. How could you ever be sure about anything? So the question, one of the sheikhs was presented this, and the scholar, he asked, well then how could you be sure? How could you be so sure about being unsure? You seem to be very sure about what you're talking about. How could you be so sure? You just said you could never be sure about anything. So what's the proof of God? We have to say, well, the proof exists. And then before we talk about that, what's the proof of atheism? What's the proof of agnosticism? Where is the proof? If I told you there's This town, just 10 minutes down the road, Princeton. Based off of how many people know, it's, in the hadith study it's called tawatur, right? So many people relate the same thing over and over, so you say it must exist. Princeton must exist because so many people would reference that on the maps, on the globe, on the GPS, in the newspaper. It exists. The entire humanity, the history of humanity, we know God exists. And everybody has referenced God. We know that religion exists. 40,000 years old graves that they found within the caves, they found it with rose or floral petals, that there was some sort of funeral that happened with these individuals. They acknowledged that there was religion. They acknowledged that this exists, and people, it was something innate within them that they called on to something higher than what was materialistic and around them. So I want to mention about this, inshallah, and so these are some of the ideas about people, what they make lots of claims. And I want you to study, inshallah, if your kids are in high school or college, talk to them about this, because it is becoming an issue. What they do is, they can't shake it's harder to, those people who are practicing, right? It's harder to get to them. But what they start is, they could sow the seeds of doubt. And this is where the game starts from. So, we ask Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala to guide us to the straight path and to keep us steadfast on that path. Lastly, I want to just, for a couple of minutes, this takes a khutbah or two, if not anything less, but I want to mention about one word that has been referenced. A lot of people, and it's really misunderstood. The word is, and it's a Quranic terminology, kafir. Kafir, right? In English, we translate it as a disbeliever. And I mention it specifically in a reference to some of the lunatics, right, who happen to be Muslims as well, who have referenced this and then have taken actions that are actions opposed to Islam. Specifically the one in New Jersey a couple of days ago that he terrorizes people. And the reference that they make is their neighbors and their people, people around, they're all kuffar. They're all kuffar. And they would mention this as issuing a fatwa, that they are the authority on Islam and they have the ability to call people kafir. The Prophet ﷺ, when he received revelation, Quran, Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, he told them, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. That is true. Say to those disbelievers. The Prophet ﷺ received revelation. Allah told about these people that they rejected the truth, kafara, so they have become kuffar. You and I do not have access to revelation. You and I do not have access to revelation. We cannot open up the hearts of people and label them kafir or Muslim. We accept what they say in terms of they could be Muslim, they could be non-Muslims. The Quran accepts, and it says, yes, there are people who are kuffar, because those people who rejected faith, those people who fought the Prophet ﷺ, those people who knew he was a messenger of God, but they were arrogant people. These were called kuffar in the Quran. We do not have the ability to open up the chests of people and see if they are in between kufr or Islam. Because how do we know that Islam was presented to them in a crystal clear fashion and they rejected the truth? What is being talked about as Islam, many of us, if we were not Muslims, would we accept that? And you would have to question. Really, it takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of finding out. And those people who do find out and those who accept Islam, they're people who are seeking something in their lives. And credit goes to them. But really, of all the things that are happening, it is not our job to delineate who's a Muslim, who's a kafir. But our job as Muslims is to deliver the message that the Prophet ﷺ came with. We have to deliver the message. We're not people of qada. We're not judges who are throwing stamps and issuing who's a kafir and who's a Muslim. This is not our job. Our job is to deliver the message. And this is where it starts from. In general, you could talk about, yes, if somebody says this, they have disbelief. But individuals, we cannot see and open up their hearts. So وَقُولُوا قَوْلِي هَذَا وَاسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ لِي وَلَكُمْ وَلِسَائِرِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَالْمُسْلِمَاتِ رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا عليك توكلنا وإليك أنبنا وإليك المصير ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين اللهم اغفر المسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما آمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وصلى اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وأقيموا الصلاة